Next we'll do our water flame symbol, which is the 3 rolling waves. So to grab our scan, we go to File, Place, locate our scan image, click Place, and that goes upon the artboard or the canvas. We select the square tool and put that over the top of the sketch. Holding Shift, we click the sketch behind and go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make. So this isolates the image ready for tracing. We'll increase it in size just a bit, and we'll go to the transparency panel and take the opacity down to 30 so we can see the vector shapes clearly on top. And we'll also go to the layers panel and we'll lock this layer down so that it doesn't move whilst we work. So the very first thing I'd like to start on this logo design is this wave, the largest wave at the front. So once that is done and refined, we can then replicate it for the next and the final one at the back. And then we can join those up with the bottom curve and the curves between. So to begin on this wave, I'm going to select pink from the swatches because this is a colour which stands out. And the shape I'm going to select is the ellipse. And I'm going to go over this shape with the circle. And I'm going to take the opacity down to 30 of the shape so I can see the sketch underneath. And if we position this so that it sits nicely with the sketch, then we draw another circle to match the inside curve of the sketch. And we can reduce the opacity of this also, and we'll zoom in a little. So matching the sketch lines as closely as possible. Okay, now it's time for us to deduct the inner circle from the outer circle. So clicking the left mouse button, then Shift, and clicking the left mouse button for the outer circle. We go to Pathfinder, Shape Modes, and minus front. Clicking upon that, it reduces the shape. Now we'll click the pen tool, and we're going to put an anchor point up here, and we're going to drag out a curve to do the point of the wave. Happy with that. And once that curve's done, if we click this anchor point and we draw a shape rather out here, and we deduct this using the Pathfinder again with both of these shapes selected, and we go to minus front once again. And there's a stray shape here which hasn't deducted, so we highlight that and just press delete on the keyboard. So let's turn the opacity up for that, and we'll see what this looks like. And if we go in the layers panel, switch off the eye so we can see this clearly. If we zoom in, we can see any imperfections. And as you can see, that was quite a good join from the circular ring to the point that I made. So if we zoom out, that's good enough. And we can now use this as a base for replication. That works quite well. But before we do that, before we replicate across, it's a good idea for us to start working on these curves, because those two waves at the back also feature that curve. Almost looks like a swan's head and neck. So we'll work upon that, clicking the pen tool again. We want to click this anchor point because we want to continue from here, and click and we drag because we want to tell Illustrator we want this to be a curve. Get it as close as possible, but we can always come back and refine later, and we will do before we replicate across. And letting go there. The next one will be an anchor point here. Because it's on the side of the shape, it's called a wall anchor point. So we'll click one here and we'll drag out, matching the sketch as closely as possible. And we'll go to here, and then we'll need to go to the transparency panel to switch this down, switch the opacity down so we can see the sketch behind again. Click this anchor point to continue work, and we'll click here. So what we're doing now is ensuring that when we replicate this across, that things don't need to be redone. So the front of the neck here, if we picture this wave as a swan, will continue to here, and it will only need joining maybe from there to there, a very short distance. So we have a circular curve here, so what we can do is we can actually use a circle to get this perfect. So we draw a circle into here, and now we only have this little part to fill from there to there. So it's basically joining two circles with a pleasing curve here. So if we make this transparent also, there we go. And holding shift, clicking upon that neck shape, as we call it, and going to the Pathfinder panel and clicking minus front, that'll deduct the shape. Now turning that up to full opacity, we want to see the shape in all its glory, and we can see clearly that we need to deduct something here. So we click and click again, holding shift, so we'll click that neck shape and we'll go to minus front. Now with that shape selected and the top shape selected, we're going to go to merge in the Pathfinder panel beneath Pathfinders. That's going to make the shape a singular. So we're going to switch off the sketch and we're going to take a look at our shape that we've just made. And we're going to go in and we're going to tackle this little problem here. There's also an amendment that needs to be made here. So ideally we only want one anchor point up here and another anchor point there. As it stands, we've got an anchor point here which is spoiling the curve, and we've also got an additional anchor point up here which is making a cutout in the shape. So if we zoom in and we click upon the pen tool, delete anchor point tool, and we can delete the one at the bottom so that we're left with only one anchor point up here. And we're going to do the same with this one, clicking upon that, and that affects this curve, but we don't worry because we're going to select the direct selection tool and click on the handle, the top handle, whilst holding shift to keep it on the vertical, and we're going to drag upwards. Now you can see we're rebuilding the same curve, but this time without the glitches. And if we let that go there, that's done. So if we zoom out, we take a look, And we'll zoom in here just to check it once more. Let's see if we could make just some slight improvements by working this handle. And that marks that wave complete, and we can now go on to replicate across. So to replicate across, we hold Alt and Shift, left mouse button and drag, and we'll work on the next. So we'll resize that, holding Shift to keep it in proportion, and we'll place this wave over the top. Now this is where our vector shapes deviate from the actual sketch, because obviously my pen hand or pencil hand isn't as perfect as a replicated shape. So we'll position this as well as we can, paying attention to this part because this is where it's going to join to this curve. And that position appears good enough, but we'll also replicate another one with Shift and Alt just to make sure we've got room for the other one and it's going to sit nicely. Yes, we'll delete that for now and we'll begin working on this curve to join those both. We'll zoom in, we'll select the pen tool, click an anchor point here, and we'll click in here on the bottom shape and we'll drag a curve. Click on the anchor point and we'll click on the anchor point there and up here, and holding Shift, click the second wave and the first wave, and we'll go to Pathfinder, and beneath Pathfinders we'll click Merge. So this makes it a solid shape. Let's turn off the sketch to see how this curve looks. Okay, zooming in a little bit more, I want to analyse this curve, see how we joined it. Okay, so we have an anchor point here that doesn't need to be there because we'll have an anchor point at the bottom and we have an anchor point up here on the wall. So to create a curve like that, there only needs to be those two anchor points, so we can delete this one here. So clicking the delete anchor point tool, we can click upon that and delete. Now we use these handles to manipulate the curve, namely this handle. So holding Shift to keep it on the horizontal, we drag across, left mouse button held down, and there we have it. So now we need to do the last wave. But I've merged those two shapes. I actually forgot that I needed it. So I'm going to use a square shape. I'm going to hold Shift, highlight both those shapes. I'm going to go to shape modes and I'm going to click, not minus front, I'm going to click intersect, and that gives me this shape once more. Maybe we'll drag the shape across and click intersect so I've got more of this neck shape. And we'll turn the sketch back on to see where we are, and I'm going to reduce this down and move it across so it can be blended down here with the next wave. If we zoom in, and click the pen tool and click an anchor, and we click and drag to tell Illustrator we want this to be a curve. We click on the anchor and click further down just to fill in a little white gap. And with this selected, the new shape selected, and the other two shapes, whilst holding shift. Or the other one shape because we joined these two. We go to Pathfinders, merge. So this makes it a solid shape. So if we turn off the sketch, we'll just analyse this curve here. Direct selection tool, dragging across. See if there's any anchor points that we don't need once again. And we click the delete anchor point tool. I'm going to take out an anchor point here. And another one here. And that looks good. We're going to zoom out. Now putting the sketch back on, you'll see that we need to get rid of this. So we could use an eraser tool just to introduce something new. Take out a portion of that. And then we could begin work using the pen tool. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the ellipse tool and I'm going to draw out the bottom of this shape. And we're going to put the opacity down to 30. I'm going to bring the circle up slightly because I feel it's a little bit too large. Okay, so you can now see there's bits that we don't need in between the waves. So I'm going to use the pen tool and I'm just going to make a shape over that part of the circle. And now I'm going to hold down shift, select the circle, and I'm going to go to minus front, so that takes that part of the circle out. So with that done, now we're going to increase the transparency, and I'm going to join the front to the front wave and to the back wave. So we'll do the front first. I'm going to click here on the path and I'm going to click the corner anchor point on the front wave. There we go. I'm going to click the anchor point at the top and just fill in the white gap. Selecting both, all shapes, I'm going to select beneath Pathfinders, merge, so we have a solid shape. In the layers panel, I'm going to switch off the sketch to see what we have, and I want to manipulate with the direct selection tool this handle because it looks a little bit jagged at the top. Let's zoom out, see what we have. We could delete an anchor point here, so we're going to delete that, see what we can do without that. Clicking the direct selection tool again, holding shift to keep this on the vertical, letting go shift just so we can veer off to the left. Click the canvas to see that, and that's done. So now we're going to work on the back of the symbol on the rear wave. So clicking the pen tool, we want to click in here. I'm going to select white from the swatches. We click the anchor point at the bottom and we'll click here. And we drag out, tell Illustrator that we want this to be a curve, even though it looks like a straight line and there isn't much curve. And we'll click out to create a white shape, which we're now going to deduct from this shape on the right, our waves. So holding shift, left mouse button, selecting the waves, we go to Pathfinders and we go to trim. Sorry, we go to shape modes and we go to minus front. So let's zoom in and see what we have here. Direct selection tool. Clicking and dragging across shows the anchor point. Now there's an anchor point here which I'm a little bit dubious of, which I feel I could delete. So selecting delete anchor point tool, I'm going to click upon that. Now I'm going to use this handle up here to bring this down to recreate a more flowing curve without that additional anchor point. There we have it. And colouring the symbol black. The symbol of the 3 rolling waves is now complete. Before we sign the symbol off, however, you might note that it's looking a little bit too primitive, in the sense that you can see that each of the waves is clearly made of a circle, likewise of the base, which is made of an oval shape. So to counter this problem and to make the overall symbol look a lot better, we can apply a very subtle effect. So if we go to effect, the top of the screen, and we go to warp, then bulge. If we apply a 12% bulge and we click preview, then OK, and we have a look at that, I'm sure you'll agree that it looks a lot better because we've broken the shape of the primitive circles and the oval shape. So clicking upon that, to finalize this shape, we need to expand it. So we go to Object Expand, and this takes the outlines out to the effect outlines. So this marks the symbol as a final.